Here we are. Greetings, folks. We are back on our bi-weekly schedule, at least for now. So, quite a bit to talk about tonight, and none of it's really a shock or a secret. But here we are. I'll go through my usual first. By the way, if you may notice, I'm at a slightly different angle right now. Hey, Nikki, how are you? It's a weird time. I had a couple people write me and say I really want to make it on, but I just can't at that time. And I get it. There's Wolfie. Hey. Um, I've been a little erratic in my timing too, and I'm hoping to get back to semi regularly. Uh, go through the usual first for anyone who's just tuning in or just watching this for the first time. Uh, Fox and Board Tavern chat, where we talk about all things tabletop. Well, tonight we're going to talk about specifically something tabletop. Um, and you can find us at foxandboardgames.com, all social media at Fox and Board Games, and patreon.com, Fox and Board Games. And thanks to the couple new Patreon subscribers, Paula and a few other people who signed on in the last 24 hours now that the game's been released, which of course is the topic for tonight. Long, long trip to get to this point. Thanks to all of you who have supported either through the stream or through Patreon or whatever. This is kind of the point I've been leading up to. We're not. This is the first step on the path. A couple people have asked me, "How's it feel? Are you thrilled?" Well, yes, of course. But I'm also aware this is just the beginning. This is just kind of the first steps. Um, so yeah, if you come in on YouTube, they're also on YouTube, of course. This chat will be appearing later on YouTube. We have some some exclusive content coming to YouTube. Some's already there, and we'll have more next week. I'm going to be doing some playthroughs of the game, just some quick like tutorials, like this is what this means in the game. This is how you roll the dice. This is how it impacts the game. Just like very, very cursory stuff. That'll start appearing next week probably. We have at the end of this week Q&A with me about the game with my accomplice and friend and social media manager and marketer, Maeve. She sent me a little Q&A. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting to get to this point after so many years. As I started to say before, a little bit different point of view tonight. I've had some issues with my display on my now 5-year-old MacBook that doesn't belong to me. So the camera did not work tonight. That was a new one. So I set up a little webcam I have, which is not as good quality as the onboard camera, but it's not my machine. It's Raritan Valley Community College's machine. So let's start at the beginning. So much to go over. Set up a little viewer. So the topic for tonight, it's all about Tales of the Harrowed Land, the RPG I have been developing, which the bulk of this streaming is either me working on the game, sometimes talking about the game, but often talking about other stuff as well. And let's see. Let's pop that right up there. So over on Drive-Thru RPG now, as of this time, it is available exclusively on Drive-Thru RPG. And what it is the primer, a rules primer, a quick play rules primer. It's only about 20 pages. And again, for those of you who have been following and tuning in, know that the actual game document is 550 pages. Maybe a couple over or a couple under after layout and editing, or maybe more or less after layout and editing. But right now it is a massive game book. It rivals the Pathfinder core book in scale, including a whole bunch of world building and mythology and language and all this kind of stuff. That is coming. This is not that. This is just a 20-page. This is the world. This is how the game works. Jump in and play it. Have fun. Here's a little intro scenario and 4 pre-generated characters, plus some cool maps. I'll go through a little bit what's included tonight. That's really the goal of tonight. It's just going to be kind of a quick run through this. To say I'm exhausted is a little bit of an understatement. I felt like today I just felt like I kind of had a normal life. So, I've known a lot of professional designers, graphic designers, and web designers. And there is this cycle of mania, like it's kind of in this. If you're a commercial graphic designer, it moves more quickly because the bank wants their website up and designed and working in a month's time, right? They're paying you, some astronomical amount of money. When it's your own creative freelance stuff, it's a different kind of a different game. So oh, thank you, thanks, Peach. Happy day to you. So I went through that slow burn phase of getting everything together, and as most of you know, through May and the beginning of June, I kind of had the first document of this kind of in place. Then I went through a proofreading, then getting this scenario laid out, and I play tested it twice. Play tested it once at TotalCon, which as I've said, it was very well received at TotalCon, and I played it 2 Sundays ago with a small private group, and it went really well. And I said, okay, I think it's safe to do this. Now, writing it up so other people could actually understand what was going on is this totally different challenge, and I did have it read through. Blake took a read through. He's a good editor and a good proofreader and spot checker and consistency checker. And he seemed to think it was a flow. He was able to get it. And then there was just this week of pretty much just buckling down every free minute I had went into this. I had some company in the meantime. I had Adam here for a few days when we did DexCon, Dex Light. I'm already thinking Mepicon, so that's we'll get to that later. And then a good friend Tim, who's on here quite often, Skullstein was here down for a week, which was great. But then, like, as soon as I had a moment after he left, I went in to get this finished. I went in to get this ready to go. And it showed up on time. I put it up on Drive-Thru RPG Monday afternoon, and within 24 hours, like exactly 24 hours, they had okayed it and put it up. So this is something that I'm hoping people will download, read through, obviously give feedback if you have feedback. But hopefully you'll play it. Hopefully you'll sit down with your group. Now the introductory scenario is kind of a walkthrough for the system as well. Maybe not in the end as walkthrough-y, if we're going to use that word, as I had wanted, but it was also a space consideration. It already has hit 50 pages. I said, you know what? This is an intro scenario. Like, there were 45 pages. I was like, this needs to just be done and get out there. And, I've determined every game master who picks this thing up is going to do whatever they want with it anyway. So, I just put it out. I just got it all together, got it formatted. Hopefully got it all proofread and spell checked. I guess we're going to find out. I'm pretty good at it. Word is better at it. Blake took a look at it. He's good at it. He even found stuff that I had missed. Brought up a couple points like, oh, you should try this because this will be more effective. And he was absolutely right in most cases. And now it's out. So it's out there in the wild. So the purpose this serves is to introduce people to the game. Now it is free. It is free with a pay what you want option. And I've already had people pay for it. So that's great. I mean, that's fantastic to log in. At about... I originally didn't do a pay what you want option. Then a couple of my friends were like, you're an idiot. Just do a pay. People will pay for it. I was like, okay. And then so today, I was around noon, I was kind of like, oh, let me go take a look at that. Yeah, I didn't expect anything. And at noon today, I had just under 50 downloads. And I had people pay me money for it. And I kind of just sat there like, okay. At about 4 o'clock, when I got to sit back down at the machine after a busy day, I had 70 downloads and more money. And again, at this point, all the money is going towards producing the final product. We're not anywhere near a profit phase yet. And I'll talk a little bit about that too tonight, obviously, what the long-term plan is. But here it is. It's out. It's out. I can't take it back now. It'll be interesting to see because, in my mind, everything is crystal clear and working smoothly. And when I run this game with people, everything is clear because I know the rules. Well, I pretend to know the rules. And I roll the story, and the story keeps flowing, and people get engaged in the world and the story. It'll be really interesting to see what happens when other people who don't have any access point to this download it, and what the response is. Overwhelmingly now it's people who know me and have been supporting me, like people on here, people on my Patreon, friends of mine who are not on any of the social media, who have jumped in and downloaded and maybe even thrown me money. I, you know, I absolutely am not taking any of that for granted. A wise man once told me, if you ever have 100 people in your life that get really interested in what you're doing, you've done a really good job. And considering I've been involved in now three consistent bands, two of which at their peak topped over 1,000 followers, and would pack a few hundred people into a venue on their own. I consider myself extremely fortunate. And it's also hard work. I had someone today on Jill, another friend of mine today, say, oh, you're living your dream. It's great. And again, I don't take any of this for granted. And as I replied to her, this was on the Sword and Sorcery. And by the way, if you don't know, there is a Facebook group for the game and for Sword and Sorcery role playing and art and whatever in general. No, I replied to her and I said, yeah, there's a lot of, I am living my dream, but it's taken, probably most of my adult life to get to the point that I could say I'm actually doing something I really enjoy most of the time. And again, this is not a permanent. There's a whole other undercurrent going on upon my return to academia, and we'll see how that goes. But this will also be a part of it, and it has to be. I've kind of just made that commitment. But it was also a lot of timing, having some extra money to throw at this when I could to get it going, and a lot of work, a lot of time that I thought, well, yeah, sure, I'd like to go out and do that, but friends of mine who see me in real life, or who even I try to meet up and do stuff with online, can attest there have been several times over the past month, especially, where I've been like, yeah, no, sorry, busy, can't do it, working. And until you kind of get that this is work and that it's just like a day job, except you may never actually get paid a whole lot for it. Maybe, hopefully I will. But, or enough, paid enough. So it is pay what you want. And again, that's, if people download for free, that's great. Because what this is really for, it's out there in the wild now for people to just enjoy it, download it, play it. But what it's really out there for is that we're going to start the crowdfunding for the full game. Probably, I'm thinking in September is when I'll start filtering out the first, here comes the crowdfunding. Keep an eye on this. And again, I'm under certain contractual obligations in terms of entrepreneurship and working that and making money that I have to abide by till my contract's up in August, at the end of August. So I can't do a whole lot, and that's the other reason why I'm not really pushing out a lot of paid content or paid game sessions, because I do have some other stuff in the back of my brain which I hope to unleash and unveil soon. But yeah, head over to the Drive Thru RPG. You could just search for Tales of the Harrowed Land or Doom and Steel, which is the name of the scenario, or Fox and Board Games. I have sent the link everywhere. I will send it right now in the chat, which really won't do anybody any good if they're looking at this later, but if they're checking this out real time, they can see the link. I don't have my own cool, unique storefront link yet. That's after you've been there a while, which is fine. I understand there's a vetting process, and I'm glad there's a vetting process, because there is, there are a lot of people out there who take advantage of these environments, and there's a lot of shiftiness that goes on. But if you happen to be logging in before the end of the chat tonight, there's the link right there. But it's over on Drive Thru RPG, and it'll be joined by some other things, probably within the next couple weeks, because there's other stuff already on deck. So I'll talk about that a bit later. Let's take a look at some of this now. So what are you actually gonna see when you download this? I'll give you a little preview of it now. Where are we at? Oop, a little distorted. So I've kind of referenced this before, and I'll talk a bit more about it in the coming weeks and on my social media. But I'm going to keep the Twitch channel. I'm going to keep doing Twitch stuff. But I've definitely gotten a call from a broader audience than Twitch, and I'll probably be doing some streaming in other environments. So we have the cover page. In the back of the cover page, there's your QR. Go to the website, dedications page. So we have kind of our intro. What is in this game, right? What is a role playing game? I don't do too much of that. I mean, this is not a game I expect people who have never played an RPG to pick up. I could be wrong though. So a little bit of what makes it different. There's one of my very first sketched maps of the game environment. As people can see, it's a very small territory compared to your average role-playing world, which is the size of a continent. And of course I get into, by the way, there's all awesome art by Joseph Arsenault. Those of us who've known him a long time call him Jeff, because JF Arsenault. But it's all original art. There's no AI going on here. The only AI might be in some concept work, as I try to get an idea out to an artist and say, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking, playing the game, starting off with the formatting and how the rules are formatted, what challenges are. That's the core of the system. And again, I'll be running a video probably. We'll try to start recording it this week. If it goes well, it'll only be 1 or 2 takes of just me running through these things, these concepts with dice, to show you what I'm doing and to show you how the challenge system works. It is not alien. If you've used other die pool sorts of games before, I'm not going to be so arrogant and say, oh no, I didn't look at Vampire. I had no idea it used a 10-sided die pool challenge system. Oh, GURPS? I've never seen GURPS. I didn't know it used a die 6 challenge. I would be arrogant of me to say that and say, oh yeah, I never saw any of that. I made this all up. Of course, I'm borrowing stuff that has been historically working in some of these games and in games I've enjoyed playing. And I think I've referenced this, that when I first started this and I was just brainstorming with Neil and Blake and a couple other folks, and they, finally Neil said to me, you better just make a game you really want to play, a game that you enjoy playing. And I really took that to heart. So this is the fairly straightforward, what I would call boilerplate version of the rules. Now, I did not want to just drop a text system reference document. I wanted this to be a formatted rulebook. I wanted to give people an idea of what they were going to find when they got the final game or paid for or kickstarted the final game book. And by the way, I've already had people write me and say, when can I get the hardback coffee table version, like a D&D book or a Pathfinder book? Hopefully within a year. The kickstarting is going to kick off, and all of that takes an astronomical amount of time, takes an astronomical amount of money to do, quite frankly. I mean, it's gotten much more expensive. Even now from COVID, like production line costs and material costs have all really, really skyrocketed. When I saw what it would take to kind of print each book, even on like a moderately sized print run, I thought, wow, okay, this is why Kickstarters are asking for $200,000 to print a role-playing game book. And you don't think that, because we still think of it as like this basement hobby where people are like, sending it to the print shop down the street who's doing it in exchange for a bag of rice or something. I don't know. I mean, in the old days of RPGs, that's kind of what you were doing. You were working on this real kind of shoestring budget. But now, to be competitive and to even produce a product, a product that people take seriously, I mean, it has to be a level of quality. I'm waiting to skim through this and see a horrendous misspelling. I'm waiting for it. Waiting for it. It's a weird looking W. Do I have two W's there? I don't know. I think it's W. So, um, uh-oh. Uh-oh. I see a typo. I can actually correct that real time, which is good. I can upload the new version. But so, some of you will get the collector's edition with the 2W in weapons. Whoops. I was so careful. And no one caught that. And I didn't catch that either. But there you go. So this is what happens when you're the only person who's doing it. You don't have a whole team yet, even though I had quite a few people helping me with it at various stages. So, combat modifiers. So again, this is a very reduced version of the rules. What you don't see, the magic and the gift system in the main game is massive. Like most magic systems, it takes up this chunk of the center of the book. You know, it's this huge part of the book that kind of has its own subsystems and gets very complicated. And that's just the nature of these things. And I've talked to a number of designers in designing magic systems. They're like, yeah, it's awful. Don't do it. You know, it's like, it's terrible. Like as soon as you start introducing it, it just breaks everything. Nothing works like you want it to. But it's massive. So that's been greatly reduced. I mean, I'll show the playtest characters and some NPCs later. But really what I just do there is I kind of say, they have this power, this power, this power. That's how it works. Unlike the actual system in Magic where you have kind of this whole grouping of abilities that you can draw upon at any time. So as your playtest credits, a number of people here who watch this channel did end up with playtests. A lot of them are from conventions. I have some mood inspirations. Of course, I have Legal in Contact. The thing you hope you never have to use. But yeah, that's the rules set. So it's 25 pages. It reads very quickly. There's Blake. I did steal your name. It's called Blake Realms. That's what it's going to be called from now on. There we go. Blake Realms RPG. That'd be a whole different. It'd be like Whole. I could see the whole scene now. By the way. Yep. You're in the playtest. You're in the playtest. You're also the editor credits. Blake did a huge amount of editing work. Caught a lot of things, and even the one however we didn't catch, or I didn't catch the one mistake I just found, which I can re-upload the file. Only 70 people have the collector's edition copy with a typo. That's what it'll be. The collector's edition PDF. It's like it's like an NFT. I'll make an NFT out of it. That's what I'll do. And charge $500,000 for it. We'll go. Some sucker will buy that. Yeah. So it's a greatly reduced rule set. You know, it's 20 pages. It's not wall-to-wall text. It's got a lot of breathing room. I think the average read-through of it, and again, I read through it and I knew the content and I was really just kind of doing line-by-line reading. It took me about an hour. And again, I don't expect people to absorb all that in an hour, but it's just a general read-through. It's not like reading, Pathfinder or something like that where it's so dense that, 2 days later you're like, yeah, no fucking typos. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, seriously. That's awesome. No fucking typos. That's my... So WFO. Wide fucking open. By the way, Overkill's playing up in Bethlehem, and I think Bethlehem or thereabouts next Thursday. Trying to decide something to skip out on Blake's game and go see it. I may. They're not playing Jersey. I don't know why they're not playing Jersey. I can't fathom them not playing Starland Ballroom. Maybe they'll do it in the fall because they're doing the rest of the tour in the fall apparently. But I don't know. I'll see. Playing with X Order and Heathen. We're right back to 1985. It's kind of bizarre. I'm like, wow. Yeah, I'll see. I'll see where I'm at. You know, the end of this week. Like I said, I leaning towards it, but we shall see. We shall see. So yeah, that's our rules. That's our rules set. I think it includes all the stuff you're going to need to play. Now, the one thing I did leave out, which is typical, and I did quite a bit of research on this, typical of a primer rule is not to include character creation. I mean, that's something that kind of waits for the full edition of the game. Onto the scenario though, and I'm not going to do any spoilers, though a few people now, probably read it who I thought about playing it, and there are some spoilers in there. So the scenario has been widely, the twice I've run it now in full, it's been treated extremely differently by both groups, which I thought was really interesting. The group at the con was all like LARP style interaction, like most of the night, and kind of like just derail this entire thing with our own schemes and plots, which was really cool. I was fine with that. The second group last Sunday took it a little bit more straightforward fashion. Yes, I have a handful of pre-gens. I looked at all of them. I will probably be releasing some more pre-gens in another scenario for the primer, at least one more before the full version. I mean, it's gonna be at least a year before the full game book comes out. I can't see it being any less than that. Even if I got full crowdfunding and could quit my job and just do this, which it'd be nice. Even if I could do that, even if I managed to do that, just the sheer development time of a 500-page book when you're working with basically a skeleton crew of artists, layout people, writers, editors. I cannot afford a 40-person staff no matter what I do. So it's going to be a little while. So I'm probably going to release some more stuff for this. Yeah. I'm gonna I'll probably drop a few more pre-gens in another scenario, even just a little short scenario, like go storm this keep or whatever. But I have the tail background, and again, this PDF is lushly strewn with Jeff's amazing art. Some background. It gives some background in the world. So what I've gotten back from players on this is that the most interesting thing in all of the playtests, but particularly in this scenario, that this environment I created, this kind of microcosm of the new territories and the function and nobility there, and the way the court's presented, and the lineage of the court that I have set up, that they found that to be really interesting. And they've said it had kind of a Game of Thrones vibe, and I guess the scenario kind of does, except that it's actually it's a much more kind of ancient setting than our kind of European 1300s, 13th century, 13th to 12th to 13th century analog that Game of Thrones is. It's quite literally the analog to War of the Roses. Even the names of the houses are very close to the real War of the Roses houses and families. But the fact that people felt this world was extremely real and immersive as soon as their characters were dropped into it was a real boon, and something I really that's one of my favorite pieces of art. Jeff has this ability to just look at one of my descriptions and this is what a good illustrator does, but he has this uncanny ability to know exactly what I'm picturing and pull it out. And I just kind of like, every time he does it, I'm like, that is exactly what I was thinking and exactly what I wrote. So, in addition to the content, the scenario content, the backdrop, I do have the notes throughout, and that's what makes it a longer book. It's a 45 page about book worth of content. And what I did is I also kind of gave not only the narrative discussion for the game master, the overseer as I call them, to decide what was going to happen, but also kind of places to prompt and move the story along in a very direct fashion. As the story is written now, it takes about 4 hours with four people who are focused on it. It was pretty much right on both times. As I said, the con group canned out on me early because they were all tired, and they brought it to a narrative conclusion everybody was satisfied with in about 3 hours, and that was with a fairly extensive discussion of how the game worked. So it still was right about on. But at several points, I bring out alternate options within the story. Such as I'm not going to get into it all here. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil it in any way, shape, or form. It's interesting. I haven't looked at it for 2 days now. Since I uploaded it yesterday, and I'm just kind of looking at the format. Also seeing it like in the PDF format. How how it flows, and how my suggestions kind of can alter the flow of the story itself. Like I talk about, how to handle characters inquiring a certain way or acting a certain way in a particular environment. And I tried to really keep it clear as to how to keep the story moving in this somewhat linear fashion. And I even say in the initial version, the first, I don't know, maybe, let's take a look. 25 pages that comprises 30 pages that comprises the core story. Yeah, right. That's where I have. By the way, Blake, I did take your suggestion, and when I reference an NPC or a template, because some NPCs are grouped in templates as is usual, like keep guards. The keep guards are all the same basic character. They're all average threat characters, and I even give the suggestion if you want to make them unique, you can give one a few extra points and one a skill or one attribute to make them all surprisingly a little tougher, or give them an ability people don't expect. Give them some description too, like they have an eye patch, or they're wearing different clothes, or wearing kind of alien clothes that are unfamiliar to this environment to make them seem like an outsider. Grizzled veteran, yeah, make them a grizzled veteran, exactly. And I give that suggestion, but I did reference page numbers in the narrative because that's one thing that Blake said upon reading it. Like, oh well, when you mention the keep guards, you should just give the page number, and that's that was a good idea. I did take that. Helpful for me too. Like after he suggested, I was like, gee, that would have really helped me if I just put that into start when I was scrolling back and forth to reference what I wrote, a week earlier. I tried to keep the formatting clean. I tried to keep it consistent. Some of you know that I have done professional design before, mostly web oriented, a little bit of print production. Don't y'all want to know what happens there? That's the surprise. This seems like a very normal kind of straightforward adventure. Then whoa, what is that? How are we going to deal with this? So that was kind of the fun part. Because it kind of is the point that most people realize that something really strange. Well, there's another point earlier where people realize something really strange is going on. But then encountering something that looks like that, obviously things are not quite as straightforward as they seem. So after the main scenario, which runs about 34 pages, then I have the templates. It's about 25 pages and plus the NPC templates and NPC write-ups. It's a real struggle, and you know what? I pay really, so it's really funny. I've talked to several other academics about this, and I'm like, wow, sitting on that curriculum committee for 4 years really did teach me something. It taught me about format and organization because curriculum in higher education is nothing but formatting. Like, yeah, the content's important, but when you sit on the curriculum committee, it's all this nitpicking, formatting of this course looks exactly like that and reads exactly like this and aligns with this across the other curriculums. And it's this like, and I was actually just chatting with my coworker that is on the curriculum committee right now that I'm out, and she will be staying on it because I'm not going back. And she's like, it's just changing numbers to align, and I'm like, that's all it is. I'm like, it seems like it's so daunting. Well, yeah, and yeah, character sheets after a while. Yeah, multiply that by 100. Depends what game you're playing too, right? If you're playing Shadowrun, it's like you have to have a cheat sheet for your own character written out because there's no way you're ever going to actually remember and do all that. Especially not now. When I was 20, it was hard. With 20, we had nothing else to think about. It was hard enough. Now, as an adult, where you're thinking about 30 other things at the same time you're trying to play a game, it's it's that much more difficult. Um, so yeah, so after that, I have Doom and Steel too. So Doom and Steel's in this scenario. The Doom and Steel is the rare metal that the party is trying to get a hold of for a noble, a rich noble. But then I have a longer tail and has alternate outcomes. And what the alternate outcomes does is that provides a different um, set of circumstances and provides for a longer scenario. Instead of just a straightforward run through this scenario and get to this point in a linear fashion, I give the option of, all right, well, here's how to make it more complicated. Don't give them this information. Give them a little bit of this information instead. Introduce this NPC. Make them have to go into the target environment, let's say, in a different way. That's not so easy. And I give some suggestions for that. There also then is the option of introducing some of these more advanced NPCs, call them enemy NPCs or rival NPCs, in a more direct fashion. Like there's several that are in the background, like a Sultan, who is, I won't say who he is, because if you play the scenario, instead of read it, you'll find out. And then Kara Rawan, who you may or may not meet, is a major character in the background, but you don't necessarily run into her in the main story. And depending on how much time you have and how well equipped the party is and how quick thinking they are, it might be very dangerous to run into her. But it might be interesting in this more elaborate scenario that could end up being 2 nights, could end up being an 8 hour scenario instead of that kind of four hour timed. This should take about 4 hours. And running at the conventions this year has really helped me hone that back in. And running in, start playing games online again has really helped me hone in like what 4 hours in a role playing game is. What 4 hours in a role playing game where people don't know the rules necessarily and don't know each other necessarily. Like, how do you manage time to get that into 4 hours and keep the story flowing? And that's what these different environments, running in these different environments, has really helped me focus upon. And that really allowed me to kind of fine tune this. And then throw out these other options. Like I give an expanded layout of the keep. I guess I'll show some of that now too. An expanded layout for the keep. And this doesn't really tell you anything, so it's not a spoiler. I'll open up a couple of these. By the way, when you log on to download this, you can grab either the files individually or in a zip file. I did that intentionally too. So, I prefer to just download a file. Yeah, the organization, the information organization of flow is honestly where I see a lot of the homegrown stuff fall apart. Like you can have an amazing idea. This is a big discussion I had with Adam, and it's a thing that you learn over time and with practice. It's not something that anybody I think is born with. Oh yeah, I'm great at determining the flow of information in a nonlinear, interactive literary space, right? Like that's the kind of thing there are whole books written on this, theory books, academic books written on this. This is not the kind of thing that people just necessarily pick up and say, "Oh yeah, sure, I'm great at that." Anyway, here's some maps. There are 5 full color maps, which, if I must say so myself, I think they're pretty nice. They're all made in Incarnate. I am a paid Incarnate, so everything I do is royalty free, and I can use it. So in the basic version of the game, you don't even need any of these maps. Maybe this one, if the players kind of want to know, like, what's the layout, the external layout of this keep, and how do I get around it, or how do we decide to get into it, or what else is around it? They might be shown this, they might not. But in the longer scenario, there are reference maps, and they are full size maps that come with the download, and you can either run them on a virtual tabletop. I haven't tested scaling on Roll20. I'll probably set the scenario up on Roll20, so I guess I'll find out how successful I was, and there might even be some alterations. So you get those maps along with it, and I think they provide at least just a nice visual aid. Incarnate has a certain aesthetic that I'm not convinced really fits this game. Probably for the final game, I will have someone draw maps for me, or I will look into having maps drafted that fit this kind of more primitive, darker sword and sorcery look. But for right now, I feel these are fine for basically a freebie. I think people can live with. I think they can live with that map. The maps were kind of the relaxing part to me. That was the part I did at night sitting in front of the TV. Because really editing requires some focus. So the last thing I included in this. I'll pop these guys open. Let me shut down those tabs and open up these in tabs. I included 4 pre-generated characters. And now don't open the InDesign template. So I've gotten pretty good with InDesign. I mean, I wasn't bad with it before, but I definitely have upped the game, the InDesign game. Throw open the thumbnails. Yeah, the maps are the fun part to me. Yep. They're the chill part to me. And to me, it's just kind of this therapeutic, like, I get to draw something cool, with digital assets. And I actually don't mind hand-drawn maps either, and I'm thinking that I might take a stab at it for the final. But again, I learned from other creative ventures, like, you can't do everything. And I'd really rather, at this point, turn all the artwork over to someone else. Though I am a skilled visual artist, no, I'm not practiced. I'm not like Jeff or Lisanne or some of the other people who come on here, who are literally just that's what they do. They're amazing visual artists. I can get through it. I think I could probably come up with some pretty nice maps, but I'd almost really rather just someone else do it. To be absolutely frank with everybody, it's like, so each of these NPCs, I'm trying to tab on my OBS window, like I'm going to be able to do anything with them on my OBS window. That was silly. That was silly of me. So each of these come with a basic, what are the parts of the character sheet. So Blake, you also mentioned that the text looks different at a couple points on both the character sheets and within the body of the document, and I totally agree. And I could not. The interface was telling me it was the same font exactly. I don't have an explanation. I don't. And again, in the end, I'm definitely going to get a professional typesetter and layout for the final book. But each of these character handouts runs about 5 pages. I mean, some of it's redundant. Some of it, this same content, these first 2 pages appear in all of the character booklets. Then I have the individual write-ups. Then I have the gifts. And like I said, there's like 60 or 80 pages or something worth of gifts, not gifts, gifts in the core book that characters and NPCs can use. The magic abilities, for lack of a better word, superpowers or magical abilities. And I just reduced them to do this with it. Very direct. To include like the entire background of everybody. Like, and some of them have more. Some of them look lopsided. Like the characters with magic have like a whole extra page or 2 each. But as I've said, and I said this during the playtest, don't sit there and go, oh, well, they can do so much more because they have magic. Well, magic doesn't always work. Magic sometimes fails, and magic sometimes goes sideways. So just because a character has a couple magical effects doesn't mean they're vastly superior. They have more options. But your gifts, you just spend the essence and they work. Like a raptor's eye to shoot around, shoot objects through minute cover. That's always going to work. You spend your gift and you get your bonus. You spend your essence point, you get your bonus. Whereas the magic is this kind of process that you dictate how you're going to use it and you cast it. Like I said, this is all very straightforward. But it doesn't always work 100%. So I have 4 characters. I have a bard in the traditional, the classical sense, more of a warrior poet, a skald, a record keeper, someone who keeps an ancestral or tribal tradition alive through story, but is also a pretty badass warrior. The Celtic bards kind of fit this mode, and that's, by the way, that's part of what I hate about the way bards have kind of evolved in role playing games. Is they've gone so far from, in most renditions, that kind of I thought some of the early D&D bard concepts were actually a little closer than some of the later stuff that we see in any of these games as to what a bard can do, and what they do, and how they do it. But that's a personal preference thing. Everybody likes their tiefling bards, so hey, that's cool. Then I have, for lack of a better stereotype, a ranger sort. Except they have a little bit of magic, which I know, okay, that's also not untraditional now, but it's a different kind of magic. This is more stealth and combat oriented. And so they kind of go for that, a little bit of ranger, a little bit of roguish ability. And again, one of the key features of this world that people have found both very interesting and a little confusing at first, that there's no classes. And there's no fantasy races. Everybody's a human. You might have some predispositions culturally, but for the most part, you are all people. You're all humans of one sort or another. And there's nothing in there in terms of, you have different radically different power levels because you're a different class. Everybody kind of starts with the ability to gain. I just had a straight thought about something I could alter. Like as I'm reading this, I'm like, I know I could have changed that on that character. No, don't change it on that character. Don't do anything. Don't touch anything. It's done. Leave it. Except for that typo that I found. Except for that typo, which is pretty hilarious. That I hear scanning it live on a line and I see a typo in it that neither of us got. I'm like, really? You snuck by? It might, for in all fairness, it was in a heading, and it might even be something that I altered after Blake proofread it. Well, it's literally a typo though. It's not a misspelling. It's like literally like two W's instead of one. Duh. Which is the problem that we discussed. Creating all that as graphics in InDesign or in Illustrator. That's what happens. Is that you don't necessarily, you don't necessarily see that. So I've kind of the ranger-ish character. Then I have a roguish character. There are only certain numbers of stereotypes that you get in these games, in these environments. Even if you look at Conan the Barbarian or Conan the Destroyer, the adventuring parties kind of had all these tropes and all these types. The difference is you can really pick and choose in this game, and that's one of the features that I find advantageous. Is that you could have a noble, have a noble with noble backgrounds and birthright backgrounds, but also know a little bit of magic like this fellow. And by the way, as I say, I have visual representations here just to give you an idea of what the characters in the world look like. Gender, naming, etc. The names are all actually gender neutral according to each of the cultures. I intentionally chose names that linguistically for the root culture that I based these on and what the names actually mean are gender neutral. And I did that intentionally. So, people can say they have a male presenting or female presenting femme mask character as they so choose. That's not my business to tell them how they want to portray their characters. And I even give some suggestions how to change these characters up a little bit. And if somebody wanted to say alter one slightly once, and I don't suggest doing this before you play the game, but let's say you run this scenario once or twice, and then you want to kind of play around with the characters a little bit. I give a couple suggestions, just very brief suggestions. Last but certainly not least, which I find these incredibly helpful when I'm running the game. And I wrote this stupid thing. Actually, let me close out of the character sheets. These are the quick start rules. Or should I say the cheat sheets for the quick start rules. So again, I have them bundled and in one full document, and then I also have them broken up. I think I have a skills sheet here as well. Did I not bring that in? I thought I did. Oh, where's the skills sheet? Did I not upload the skills sheet? I think it's bundled in the full one. Yes, so I have the skills sheet here. I should probably put the skills sheet up as a separate document. So this is just a summary of the various skills that are present in the game. Yeah, this was something neither of us caught in the first document. So now you're a pretty good editor. I mean, you catch details. I'm not so detail oriented. I have trouble sometimes, especially if I've written something. Now, if I haven't written something, if I'm grading a paper or, I'm looking at student work, obviously, then I'm, Mr. Merciless in terms of correcting things, but that's because that's my job at the time. Yeah, I guess I don't have the skills primer up separately. Oh, no, there's skill summary. Okay, good. I thought I neglected to put the skill summary up as a separate sheet. But yeah, so I talk about some different skills throughout the game, and I want to give a description of basically how these skills would be used in the game. And again, in the intro scenario, I pretty much say use this skill here to solve this problem, or use these skills as options, or this is how this skill works. So I'm not necessarily really obsessed with, everybody has to have all these skills. So yeah, I mean, I did hit you with 50 pages to take a look at within 36 hours. So again, I was just grateful you did it, and you caught a lot of stuff that I would never have caught. And then when I went back through, I caught even a few more little things, but you got the bulk of it. And again, I would never have been able to see half of that on my own in that period of time. But I had set this Tuesday as the release date. We started. I actually set it for a week earlier, and I just couldn't do it between the convention, having other stuff going on. I just couldn't get it done to the quality that I wanted. And I've joked around with everybody I talk to. I could look at this thing tonight and edit 10 more things and change 10 more things, but I'm just not going to. It's out now, and until there is a full version of it to deal with, I don't think it's worth my spending any other more time on it unless I get significant feedback. Like if I have 20 players try this out over the next 6 months and write me and say, yeah, this doesn't really work. Okay, then obviously that needs to be looked at, right? If it's just an aesthetic thing on my part, like, oh, I should word that differently, it's out there now. It's out there now. If something's really unclear, I'm sure I'll hear about it. So that's where I am. That's where it's at. That was a full hour. I didn't have too much lead time tonight. I wanted to jump right in. But thanks everyone for tuning in. As always, thanks for coming on and chatting and chiming in. So what's happening next? So I just submitted 3 games to Mepicon Fall. They run it twice a year. That's Middle East PA, Middle Eastern Pennsylvania Gaming Convention, and that's again in Bethlehem, PA. And it's a fun convention. It's small. It's about 300 people, I think, was this past time. Of course, before COVID, it was actually 2 different conventions at various points. It has membership and elements of both Lehigh Con and another convention up in Scranton that might have been called Mepicon or was some called something else. They're just getting back to it. It apparently the fall is the bigger one than the spring, so we'll see. But it was extremely fun. Everybody's extremely nice. I've made like actual friends through that I still keep in contact with, more so than the other 2 conventions. So I've got a few people from Total Con I still chat with too. But I just submitted 3 games. I've submitted this game, Doom and Steel. I submitted another run of Against the Living Dead and a new Call of Cthulhu game, Down Darker Trails, Old West setting, an extraction of some stuff that I was running about a year ago. So I'm doing that. The other big news is Barnseed Village, which is a creation by Tara Clapper, who is a friend that I met through the live action scene, and she is an already published author, not necessarily game author, but essayist and blogger and professional editor and writer. She's created this very nice kind of sandboxy, but very interesting and very compelling, somewhat politically. I'm sure I'll get called. I'm bringing politics into game if I publish this, and I'm advocating woke politics if I publish this, because there is definitely a feminist bent to this story, to this scenario. I find it very interesting. I like it, and it's a role-playing environment she created for fantasy role-playing games. She's apparently used it with different systems, so it's system agnostic. She suggests Powered by the Apocalypse or D20. Simply the D20 is always suggested because that's what most people play. So that I'm going to start working on tomorrow. It's much shorter. It's I think it'll probably be about a 12 to 14 page document. We are waiting on a map for it. She does have someone doing a map for it, and that should be done by next week, which is okay because after this chaos, I'm not going to push myself to get something done and released again in the next 3 days. I physically can't. Today I had to do things like grocery shop and other chores that haven't been attended to extensively in the past week for the past 4 days while I plowed through this. So that's where we're at. Hopefully it will have something else. We're going to have something else come up on the website, on the drive-through site for sale in the next week or so. It's a little handout that I wrote, a little role-playing guide that I wrote. That's available for free right now if you go and sign up to our mailing list. That's been growing. So it's great to see that growing too. After the conventions and after some advertising, we get a little boost. But you can get it for free now. Then something else will appear for free. Hint: it might be a version of the primer or a link to the primer or something you are automatically directed to once you sign up on the website. That's where we're at. That's what we've been. That's where I've been. That's what I've been working on. If anyone's got anything they want to shout out or ask or are curious about as to how things have evolved, feel free to hit me. I'll be here for a few more minutes. Before I turn it in and go watch TV or something that doesn't require brain power. But yeah. Big thanks to everyone. Big thanks to everyone for sticking to this point. I was asked today how I felt about it, and I'm relieved. All right. Thanks, Wolfie. Thanks for your continued support. Start Justified. I'm going to start that tonight, Blake. That's something I think I'm going to watch on my own. I'll start that later tonight. We're still in the middle. We're still chewing through Rabbit Hole, which I'm finding increasingly fascinating. He suggested I check out both of them because he knows I'm into crime stuff. Like The Shield was my last binge because I never watched The Shield when it was on. Yeah, Rabbit Hole's cool. It's gotten cooler. Like at first I was like, yeah, this is a little weird. It's a little, I think I even said to you guys, like, is it one of those like Lost type shows that I never saw the original there? Wolf. Well, it's one of those shows that's like, J.J. Abrams. There's really nothing really going on. It's all this kind of weird stuff happening. You guys were like, no. You're like, it's definitely not. Like, there is definitely something going on. And, yeah, I'm totally on that foreign crime drama kick. I do the crime and the gangster stuff. Big shocker there, right? Given my upbringing around the Italians from Jersey. I like criminal stuff, but Rabbit Hole definitely is its own thing. The more I've gotten into it, I'm like, this is pretty cool. Like I said, it's very kind of cyberpunk actually. Like that, there were moments last night, like I'm just getting to all the layers of mental deception and all that stuff, and I'm like, this is totally like corporate espionage, cyberpunk-ish. The whole. I won't get into it in case people haven't seen it, but I was like, yeah, that's, not the tech quite. Well, the tech a little bit, but not, wired reflexes and smart guns and stuff. Now, the irony is we actually have low grade, I don't want to turn this into a political diatribe. We have the low grade smart gun technology available now. And certain lobby groups have blogged it and said it's against the Constitution. I'm like, wait, you mean I can get a gun keyed and I'm the only one that can pick it up and use it? Like, and I understand there's complexities there. I understand there's this paranoia about, identity collection and all this, but I'm also kind of like, but we can have smart guns, or whatever, smart whatever. We have smartphones, right? It's the same technology. So that's funny that this stuff that was, 2020 science fiction in the 80s and the 90s, it's here now. We can give people low light vision if we really want to spend the money to do it. But at the risk of this going down another rabbit hole, which I don't want to turn this channel into. I'll save that for my ranting, screaming YouTube channel. I'm gonna start when all this is coming to pass. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. So the next step is hope people keep downloading it. Hope people keep playing. Hope people start playing the game. I hope they start developing a real interest in it. I guess we're gonna find out. I guess we're gonna find out how it's gonna fly. We'll see from here. It's funny because I don't make it a secret that I've been fortunate enough to meet some fairly well known, at least in some circles, musicians, and occasionally they'll say something like, "Yeah, I hope people like the new album," and you're sitting there like, of course people are gonna like the new album. Like, one, it's great. Two, you have a following, and I'm not comparing myself to even some of these people, but I've had enough feedback to know it's a good product. But there's always that moment of like, you're sitting there like, is anyone actually going to pay attention to this? Well, clearly, even if it's mostly people who I've had contact with, I've had 70 some people as of 4 o'clock today pay attention to it, which, again, that was mind blowing to me. I was like, wow, I didn't expect that. Like, I expected 24 hours in, I'd have 5 downloads, the 4 people I chat with regularly, and a couple other people who follow what I do, maybe 10 downloads. The fact that many people have been paying attention. So it's kind of like, oh my God, people are paying it. So I guess I better go fix that typo. The 2 W's in weapon. Hilarious. Like, I just knew it. I knew I would look at it at some point down the future. I'd be like, did that really get through? That's why it's a first draft of a primer. Well, a finished draft of a primer. Oh, update the zip tile. Yeah, that's a great thought there, Blake. Good idea. Thanks for reminding me, because I would have forgotten that. I would have had people get that collector's edition typo. Go get the limited edition, Nikki. It's gonna be worth a huge amount of money at some point. That PDF with the typo. I joke about that, right? But there are magic cards with a typo that are worth like 10 times their actual value. Yeah, whatever elf, I forget their names now. That elf with an A instead of an E. And Pokemon, I'm sure. I never got into Pokemon cards, but I'm sure there are. I don't feel so bad though. Like, again, I'm not just bragging here. And again, a lot of it's through the benefit of playtesters, and Blake did the editing, and this looks a lot better than a few other primers I've downloaded and looked at in terms of consistency, in terms of layout. And yes, I have experience in layout and visual arts. That has definitely aided me. But it definitely has a leg up on some of what's out there. I mean, there's some out there. Obviously, the Old Gods of Appalachia that's from Monty Cook. It's Old Gods of Appalachia. I took a look at that and was like, oh wow, this is amazing. But they have a budget. They're an established company working with a franchise, what has now become a franchise. And by the way, if you haven't, if you're into American Gothic horror with a good deal of Great Old One thrown in, go check out Old Gods of Appalachia, both the podcast and now the role playing game. And I think it's really cool. I think it's a really cool setting. It kind of takes this whole a lot of the Lovecraftian concepts and moves it to the deep south and the Appalachian Mountains, and deals with all the American folklore and witchcraft folklore of the Appalachians. And it was kind of interesting listening to some of the new episodes driving through the Appalachian Mountains a month ago. And again, I was in a pretty hip city. I wasn't really in the Appalachians, from what I've been told. So you're in Asheville. You weren't in the Appalachians. So when people go to New Orleans, it's like, you're not in Louisiana. You're in New Orleans or New York. You're not in New York State. You're in New York City. So, but yeah, no, I know some of the early Magic cards with a typo or the wrong colored symbol. Oh, I mean, they're lunatic. And I wonder how many of those Blake and I traded in 1993 for nothing. Like, oh, well, I have like 4 of those. I'll just trade that. And it ends up it was one of the typo cards that could like buy a new house today or something. Whoever knew. All right, friends. So, Fox and Board Tavern chat. We're wrapping it up. foxandboardgames.com. All social media at Fox and Board Games. Twitch and YouTube, Fox and Board Games, predictably. Again, keep an eye on 20 Moxes and 10 Black Lotuses. Yeah, I know. Tell me about it, right? Because we're like, oh, they only give you 1 mana. What big deal, you know? Oh, we'll just trade that out for like a dragon or something, right? A dragon whelp. Sure, here, have my Mox for a dragon whelp. Fox and Board Games, and there is some stuff. Yeah, I know. They were cool. They're gemstones. And we do have some exclusive YouTube content relating directly to the primer coming next week. Hopefully next week. Well, some of it will definitely be next week because it's being edited right now by Maeve. Some of it will have to be shot by me, so hopefully that'll be done. And Patreon. And again, thanks if you're watching this. A couple of the new patrons signed up. I always appreciate it. I'm getting the payment problem sorted out. There was a payment problem with Patreon that I was unaware of until 2 days ago. I mean, I kind of knew there was something weird going on, but I nailed it down, and I'm being helped by the friendly Patreon tech support people. And they are. I'm not being sarcastic. They're trying to be very helpful. So that's good. And again, if you're a patron, you're getting sneak previews of all this, and you're getting some additional content. And I'm going to get back to offering more regular tiered content. This had to get done. I'm not even going to apologize. Like, this had to come out. And you'll be seeing some new Patreon only stuff for various games or for system agnostic play coming up in the next couple weeks. So thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for dropping in and supporting me. And have a good night.